All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling something I think we all struggle with: building better habits.
Yeah, I think that's something we can all relate to.
Definitely. And you guys sent in a ton of great stuff for this deep dive. We've got expert interviews, forum discussions, blog posts.
Yeah, the whole gamut.
It's going to be good. So, our mission today is to break down the science behind how habits actually form. And more importantly, give you some real actionable strategies to make those changes stick, not just for a week, but for good.
That's right. And we'll even explore how the people around you and the places you spend time can actually help or hurt those efforts.
It's true. It's not just about willpower. Okay, so one thing that really grabbed my attention was that interview with BJ Fogg, the behavior scientist. He was on the Think Fast, Talk Smart
Oh,
podcast.
yeah, I heard that one. It was good.
So good. He talks about this thing he calls the information action fallacy, which is basically the idea that just knowing something should be enough to change your behavior.
Right, like, oh, I know eating cookies all day isn't healthy.
What?
But
Exactly. Like, as a parent, how many times have I told my kids to clean their rooms, thinking that, well, obviously, it's a mess, so they'll just do it.
hmm,
Doesn't quite work that way.
no surprise there. Kids or adults are all kind of wired the same way, right?
Totally. So Fogg, he kind of throws that whole idea out the window. Says just giving people information rarely leads to lasting change.
And instead, we need to.
Create the right conditions for that change to happen.
Exactly. It's like setting the stage.
And that's where his behavior model comes in. He calls it BMAP.
BMAP. Okay, break that down for me.
So B obviously stands for behavior. And the MAP stands for motivation, ability, and prompt. And his point is behavior happens when all three of those things come together at the same time.
Okay, so let's say I want to, I don't know, read more books. How would that
Yeah.
work?
Perfect example. So instead of just saying, I want to read more, you pick a specific book that you're actually excited about. That's your motivation. Then you make it easy to do. Like keep a paperback copy by your favorite chair so it's right there.
Yeah.
That's ability. And finally, the book itself, just sitting there, becomes your prompt. It's like a little visual reminder every time you walk by.
Wow. That actually makes a lot of sense. It's so simple.
Right. Simple but powerful.
Yeah. I can see how you could use that model for pretty much anything.
Hmm.
Like eating healthier or exercising more, even just remembering to take your vitamins.
Totally. What's a habit you're trying to build? Maybe we can apply it.
Well, let me think.
And while you're thinking, I just want to add something about prompts, because I usually think of them as good things. They remind us to do the things we want to do, but
But they can also be bad.
exactly. Like if you're trying to say, cut back on social media, but you keep your phone on your desk with notifications popping up all the time, that's just setting yourself up for failure. Those prompts are working against you.
It's like they're sabotaging you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe putting your phone in a drawer would be a better idea.
Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Right.
So, okay, we've got motivation, ability, and prompts. But Fogg argues that there's another element that's even more crucial for habit formation. And it might surprise you. It's emotion.
Emotion. Really?
He actually says, quote, it's emotions that create habits. That feeling of success is what wires in habits.
Huh. So it's not just about doing the thing, it's about how it makes you feel after you do it.
Exactly. It's about that positive reinforcement.
So like if I feel good after I go for a run, I'm more likely to go again.
Exactly. And that's a key part of Fogg's tiny habits method.
Tiny habit.
Yeah. It's the idea that instead of trying to make huge changes overnight, you start ridiculously small. Like do 2 push-ups, drink an extra glass of water, meditate for 1 minute, anything. The point is to make it so easy that you can't not do it.
And then you celebrate those tiny wins.
Exactly. And that feeling of, hey, I did it, even if it's for something super small, it starts to wire in the habit.
Interesting. I like that. So you don't have to go from 0 to 60.
Nope. It's all about those baby steps.
What about like those really intense challenges? Do those work the same way?
That's a great question. And actually, we have a perfect example of that in the source material. It's the 75 Hard Challenge. Have you heard of this?
Maybe. I think so. It's like super intense, right?
It is. So there's this guy, Freak, on the Fastlane forum. He outlined his version of it, and it's pretty hardcore. We're talking 2 workouts every day. One of them has to be outside. No alcohol, strict diet. You got to read 10 pages of a business book every day. And get this, a cold shower every day.
Whoa, cold shower every day. I don't know about
Right.
that.
Yeah, no cheating allowed, no smartphones, no Netflix, no music in the car. The whole thing's designed to push you to your limits.
Wow, that's a lot. So does that even work?
Well, I think what's interesting here is even in something that extreme, he still builds in positive reinforcement. He actually mentions enjoying his outdoor workouts. He likes the feeling of being disconnected from his smartphone, and he gets a lot of satisfaction from completing his really intense evening routine.
Huh. So even within a really tough challenge,
Hmm.
there are still those moments of, I did it.
Exactly.
It's all about finding those little wins.
And holding yourself accountable. He also mentioned that if he fails, he has to donate a big chunk of money to a cause he hates.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's some serious motivation right there.
Talk about high stakes. Okay, so we've gone from these extreme challenges to these tiny habits. Let's talk about something in between. The key takeaways from Atomic Habits by James Clear. This was summarized by Theodicus Finch on the Seven Cups forum.
Okay, yeah. Atomic Habits. I've heard a lot about that book.
It's a good one. So Clear's approach really echoes a lot of what we've been talking about. He's all about the power of small, consistent actions. He actually calls it the power of 1% changes.
1% changes.
Yeah. His point is that tiny improvements, when you do them consistently over time, they can lead to some pretty remarkable results. But the flip side is also true. Small declines over time can have the opposite effect.
So it's like compound interest, but for your habits.
Exactly.
I can definitely see how that would resonate with Fogg's tiny habits philosophy. It's all about consistency over time.
And Atomic Habits also stresses the importance of building systems.
Systems.
Yeah. So instead of focusing on specific outcomes, you focus on the process that supports those outcomes. Think of it this way. Instead of trying to clean your room once a week when it's a total disaster,
Right.
you set up systems to keep it from getting messy in the first place.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not about the goal. It's about building the habits
Yeah.
that help you reach that goal.
Exactly.
So instead of relying on willpower to avoid snacking all the time,
Right.
you just get rid of the unhealthy snacks in your house, right?
Yeah.
You make it so you don't even have to think about it.
You got it. You're removing the temptation and making the healthy choice the easiest choice. Which brings us to another big idea from the book, focusing on identity-based habits.
Identity-based habits, what's that?
Instead of saying, I want better mental health, you'd say, because I care about my mental health, I do these things.
Ah, I get it. It's like you're aligning your actions with who you want to be.
And the more you do that, the more it reinforces that identity, right? It becomes part of who you are.
That's pretty powerful.
The fourth takeaway, and this one is super practical, is Clear's breakdown of the habit loop. He has these 4 laws. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Ooh, I like frameworks. That's super helpful.
And it's funny. These 4 laws actually line up perfectly with those quick tips from Dr. Nicolia's YouTube video. Have you seen that one?
I don't think so.
Well, she talks about leaving your running shoes by the door to make exercise more obvious and wearing workout clothes that you love so it's more attractive.
I love that. It's those little things, right?
And she says to start small and gradually increase the intensity to make it easier.
Hmm.
And to reward yourself with something healthy, like a snack you love or a workout that makes you feel good to make it more satisfying.
It all ties back to those 4 laws.
And speaking of making things obvious and satisfying, there's also a really interesting connection between Atomic Habits and the X effect technique that someone described in a Reddit post.
X effect.
Yeah, it's really simple. You basically just track your progress by marking X's on a calendar or a chart.
Oh,
So it's visually rewarding, right? You get that immediate feedback every time you do the habit.
yeah, it's like you're playing a game against yourself.
Exactly. Now, of course, we've got to talk about that YouTube video, Neuroscientist, Build Life-Lasting Habits in Just 21 Days. That one caught my eye, too.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Well, this approach is kind of the opposite of everything we've been talking about. It's all about intentionally overloading yourself. You pick like 6 new habits you want to build, and you try to do at least 4 or 5 of them every day for 21 days straight.
Wow, that sounds intense.
And then after the 21 days, you assess which habits have stuck, become automatic, and then you focus on just maintaining those.
Huh. So it's like a boot camp for your habits.
Right. It's kind of the opposite of starting small, right? It's about diving right in.
Well, hey, different strokes for different folks, right?
Uh-huh.
I guess it depends on your personality.
Absolutely. And the beauty of it is we've got all these different approaches to choose from. You can find what resonates with you, what fits your lifestyle, your personality.
Your goals, your everything.
Okay, so we've explored all these individual strategies for building better habits. But there's another dimension to habit formation that I think we often overlook, the social side of things.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's all about how our environment and the people around us can have a huge impact on our habits. We're not just isolated individuals trying to change in a vacuum. We're influenced by the people we spend time with and the places we go.
Yeah, that makes sense. If all your friends are couch potatoes, it's going to be a lot harder to stick to an exercise routine, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly bombarded with ads for unhealthy food,
It's going to be tough to resist those cravings.
so our environment can either support our efforts to build better habits or it can totally sabotage them.
So what can we do about it? I mean, we can't just choose new friends and family, can we?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and that's what we're going to dive into next.
All right. Can't wait.
So, we've talked about how our environment and the people around us can really make or break our habits. And, speaking of environments, that Zen Habits blog post about super health communities really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah, that was a fascinating one.
It's all about how certain communities seem to have cracked the code when it comes to healthy living.
Like it's just built into their culture.
Exactly. And they're not just living longer, they're living better.
And the post highlights how a lot of these communities share some pretty interesting commonalities.
Right, like the Icarians in Greece. Those folks who are famous for living incredibly long lives.
Yeah, they're like the poster children for longevity.
Well, they live in a community where daily interaction is just the norm. People are walking everywhere, eating plant-based diets, gardening.
Yeah, they've got those strong social connections too.
It makes you wonder, right? Is it really just about individual willpower, or is it more about finding your tribe people who share your values and make healthy living feel easy and enjoyable?
It's a great question. And I think the post kind of hints at that. It's not just about what they're doing, but who they're doing it with. And it mentions a couple other groups too.
Like the Okinawans in Japan, right?
Yeah, the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California.
And they all seem to share those same key ingredients, those strong social connections, physical activity as just part of daily life,
Plant-based
and a
diet.
sense of purpose, especially for older adults. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. And it's interesting because this whole idea of super health communities ties in with something we touched on earlier, the power of social affirmation. Remember that blog post by
Ravi Raman.
yeah. He was talking about how having a community that supports your goals can make a huge difference, whether it's friends, family, or an online group.
It's about that sense of belonging, right? Knowing you're not alone in the struggle.
Exactly. And having people who understand your goals, who cheer you on and hold you accountable, especially when things get tough.
It can make all the difference. Okay, so let's get practical. How can we apply this whole super health community concept to our own lives? I mean, most of us don't live on a Greek island.
Right. It's not like we can just pack up and move to Ikaria tomorrow.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So how do we bring a little bit of that magic into our own lives?
Well, the Zen Habits post actually offers some great suggestions.
Okay, like what?
Well, you can start by involving your friends and family. Maybe you suggest a weekly walking group or a healthy meal prep day where you all get together and cook, or even just checking in with each other regularly about your goals and progress.
Those are some great ideas. Small steps, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And if your current circle isn't, super into the whole healthy living thing,
You can always seek out like-minded people.
totally. There are so many groups and communities out there, both online and offline. Think about joining a running club, a yoga studio, a meditation group. There are tons of online forums and groups dedicated to all sorts of healthy habits.
And even if you can't find an existing group.
You can start your own.
Exactly.
You can be the change you want to see. What if you transformed your neighborhood into a mini super health community?
Oh, I love that idea.
Think about it. You could start a community garden, organize a walking group, host potlucks where everyone brings a plant-based dish.
Those are some fantastic ideas. It really is possible to create those pockets of positive influence, right? Even if it's just starting with one small step.
Absolutely. And those small changes can have a ripple effect. They can inspire others to join in, and before you know it,
You've got a whole community moving in a healthier direction.
exactly. It's pretty inspiring to think about.
It is. Okay, so we've talked a lot about community and social support, but let's circle back to some of those individual strategies we explored earlier. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on Clear's Atomic Habits framework, those 4 laws for building better habits. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's a brilliant framework.
Mhm.
It's so simple, but so powerful. Those 4 laws make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. They're like a cheat code for habit change. They give you a really practical way to analyze any habit you're trying to build or break and figure out what's working and what's not.
I've actually been trying to apply those laws in my own life, and I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with how effective they can be.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Well, for example, I've been trying to drink more water lately. So, to make it obvious, I keep a full water bottle on my desk at all times. I can't miss it. And to make it more attractive, I add slices of lemon and cucumber. It just makes it feel a little fancier.
Ooh, yeah, I do that too.
And to make it easier, I set reminders on my phone to drink water throughout the day. And then, to make it satisfying, I track my progress on a habit tracker app. Those little digital check marks? They actually give me a little boost of
I
motivation.
love that. You've literally optimized your environment for success.
And what's interesting? It's like all these things we've been talking about, they all connect in some way.
Right.
Like I'm applying these individual strategies from Atomic Habits, but by talking about it here, with you and with our listeners, it's almost like I'm tapping into that social affirmation and accountability we were just talking about.
Oh, totally. It's like you're weaving a tapestry of positive habits, you know, using individual effort, environmental tweaks, and social support.
That's a great way to put it. It's not about any one thing in isolation. It's about creating this whole ecosystem where healthy habits can thrive.
Exactly.
So, we've explored the power of community, we've revisited those individual strategies, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts on some of those more intense approaches to habit change? Like neuroscientists build life-lasting habits in just 21 days video.
Hmm. Well, it's definitely a different approach. It's much more intense, right? It's
Right.
like you're diving headfirst into the deep end of the pool. And it might work for some people, but I think it's important to acknowledge that there's no one size fits all when it comes to habit change. What works for one person might be totally overwhelming for someone else.
Right. I mean, not everyone is cut out for a habit boot camp.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of having all these different options, right?
Yeah.
You can choose the approach that resonates with you, that fits
Mhm.
your personality, your goals, your lifestyle.
So if someone is feeling a little overwhelmed, like where do I even begin? What advice would you give them?
Well, I'd say start by just tuning into yourself. Think about what you're drawn to, what feels doable. Do you thrive on structure and challenge? Or do you prefer a more gentle, gradual approach? Once you have a sense of your own style, you can choose the methods that align best with your needs.
I love that. It's about listening to your own inner wisdom and choosing a path that feels authentic and sustainable.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination, right? There are going to be ups and downs, moments of triumph and moments of, ugh, I totally blew it today.
It's all part of the process.
Exactly. Be kind to yourself along the way. Celebrate your wins no matter how small they seem, and learn from your setbacks.
It's not about perfection, it's about progress. Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's amazing how much there is to learn about building better habits.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. And it's funny because I started out thinking it was all about individual effort and willpower. But now I realize it's so much more than that.
Right. It's about understanding the science, designing your environment for success, and tapping into the power of community.
Exactly. It's like all these pieces fit together to create a puzzle of lasting change.
And the beautiful thing is you don't have to do it all at once. You can start with one small step, one tiny change.
And then build from there.
Exactly. What's one thing that really resonated with you from our discussion today? Something you could start doing today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I'm going to try that X effect technique. It just seems so simple and visually rewarding.
Oh, I love that. It's a great way to track your progress and stay motivated.
Yeah, I need all the motivation I can get.
We all do. But remember, be kind to yourself along the way. There will be days when you nail it and days when you maybe don't quite hit the mark.
And that's okay. It's all part of the process.
Exactly. What matters is that you keep showing up, keep trying, keep experimenting until you find what works for you.
I think that's a great message to end on. It's not about perfection, it's about progress, and it's about finding joy in the journey.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, to all our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What are your biggest takeaways from this deep dive? What small changes are you going to make to create a healthier, happier you?
Share your thoughts and your progress with us on social media using hashtag #DeepDiveHabits. We're excited to hear from you.
And until next time, keep diving deep.